Hi, my name is Debbie, and I am obsessed with all things to do with ultrasound. I'm an empty nester who has spent the last 28 years scanning in all different kinds of situations: clinics, hospitals, point of service, emergency departments, private offices, echovascular, general, high risk OB, and want to dive down deep into all things to do with technology, techniques, and transformation. It's time we take ultrasound to the next level. Think of this like your little power boost on your commute to all things ultrasound, along your way to the thing that we call work. So pull up a seat, make sure you're comfy, and be ready to be challenged and encouraged as we learn it's all about the frequency. Today, we're going to talk with Patti Tucker, a very dear friend of mine. Patti Tucker has enjoyed more than 30 years of experience in providing leadership development services, including coaching, facilitation, leadership training, strategic planning, and team building. She is an associate certified coach and received her master's in business administration from Pepperdine University in Malibu, California. Lucky her. Patti's work with Fortune 100 companies include healthcare and high-tech companies, as well as community-based and not-for-profit organizations, and focuses on enhancing service levels, improving operation expenses, communication, and building leadership capacities to improve the quality of the work products and well-being of those involved that she coaches. She lives in northern Arizona and enjoys travel, experimenting with new recipes, and volunteering with her local food share. Please help me welcome Patti Tucker. Thank you, Patti, so much for joining us today on our podcast. Patti is a dear friend of mine that I met over margaritas, and we just kind of hit it off. And she's a life coach and had some training, and I did too. And so we started talking about different topics, and I asked her to come and talk about the topic of change. So as ultrasound techs, it's like nails on a chalkboard when we hear the word change, when we're specifically talking about our equipment or our routine or the pictures that we need to get or image or this, that, or the other, because we find our security in routine, and because we're faster and we can be more accurate, and we don't forget things. So like, as ultrasound techs, we have like 100 pictures to take in high risk OB, for instance. And so if we don't get those, we have to go back and get those images. And so we develop routines and different things in order to not miss things. So our routines are kind of like a security blanket for us, right? But we're going to talk about the benefits to changing, because there are a lot of benefits to it, and yet we really kind of resist change with the hard brakes on sometimes. When we say, oh, we're going to have a machine come in and we're going to try it out, and everybody's like, oh boy, here we go. It slows us down, and yet in the end, it speeds us up and we get better quality images, and it's better for our patients. But on that forefront, that first initial angst of change is coming, right? So I thought if we walked through the steps of change as you kind of laid it out, it might help us understand it and be able to embrace it a little bit more. So tell us first, how do you define change then, Patti?
Thank you so much, Debbie. It's a treat to get to see you and to talk about change. It's not easy. But if you grabbed Webster's dictionary and looked up change, basically all it is the experience of something new. Now, sometimes we can interpret new or different as things aren't the way they used to be. And that means I'm going to lose control, and that's probably bad. Even if we didn't like the way things were, at least we knew how to manage it or control it.
Right.
Debbie, there are actually six pretty straightforward stages of change that can help all of us get a little more guidance about what's happening, what's going to come up next. Let's face it, life can be messy, unpredictable, and yet we must accept and understand that, like it or not, change moves and somehow we move with it. If we can learn some just very basic positive attitudes about change and combine them with the right tools, guess what? Any of us can learn to adapt and even thrive in changing situations. Is it easy? Not really.
Not
But like
always.
anything,
Sometimes,
exactly,
right? I think
exactly,
sometimes we get surprised.
exactly. But like anything new, it takes a while to get used to it. But over time, we learn, we integrate, and pretty soon we could do it without even thinking.
Yeah.
Well,
Ultrasound
change,
uses a lot of
you know,
muscle memory, you
oh,
know,
absolutely.
or
Absolutely.
our motions for key retrieval and labeling of images and things. And so, yeah,
Yes,
it's a big deal for us. So,
absolutely. But what's cool is that there are actually scientifically predictable elements of change, believe it or not. It's kind
okay.
of bizarre. So I'd love to share those with you. Basically, three primary predictable elements. One, which is that our brains actually create responses that are predictable and sequential. And our brains make no distinction between good change and bad change. But no matter what, our brains respond in a way that is full of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that, our brains are kind of programmed to keep us safe all the time, right? And safe doesn't always mean change, right? Because change is the unknown, right? And so, with understanding that that is our default, right? Um, is kind of valuable information because it's like, okay, this is what I'm going to just as a default. But that doesn't mean it's not okay to make a change or it's not safe to make a change, right? So
Exactly.
go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
So what are some of the other steps or levels of change?
Sure. There are even some unpredictable elements of change, and there are basically two. One is the length of time of our response to change, and the other is the intensity with which we respond. These are unpredictable because we all have different personality styles. We have other experiences. We also have perceptions about what's good and what's bad. And if we can learn to incorporate these six stages, it can help us move through changes more quickly, more effectively, and we can even have more fun.
Believe it or not, right?
Yes.
Good. So tell us more.
You might be thinking about how does my brain actually respond to a change? Each time we have a new experience, we have to actually lay down new neural pathways in our brains so that we know how to react, how to respond to the environment. We don't have that fight or flight instinct. Our brains know. We've been through this before. And if we can recognize these stages of change, we can learn to respond in a way that's effective and professional, whether we're at work or at play.
Yeah, and it takes time, right? When I like how you talked about the time, I've also done some study on addictions and different things. And so laying down that new neural pathway takes time, right? And it's just a little bit
Absolutely.
today, a little bit today, a little bit the next day, a little bit the next day. So, um, to set the proper expectation, right? For this is going
Yes,
to take some time.
that's right.
Um,
That's
so,
exactly right.
so tell us some more
Sure.
because I
Well,
know
these
there's an
six stages that,
element, I know there's an
yes,
element of just, of loss, maybe. Is that a good way to say it?
yes, that is ideal. If you think about change and changes that have gone on in, I'm sure, both of our lives, this stage one is it can create thoughts of fear. You could, your kind of behavior could even be paralyzing. And the key to moving through this first stage, stage one, is to create a sense of personal security and safety. This can help us really see the differences between real fears, real losses, and the difference between what our imagination can just dream up. And there are two key questions that you can ask yourself when you find yourself in this stage one. That is, what is the worst thing that could happen? Or what's most likely to happen?
Yeah. So, as we talk through this, I think of lots of supervisors or middle level management who has always done things certain ways, right? And um we hear often, some of my colleagues hear often, well, this is the way it was always done, or this is the way I learned, so this is the way you need to learn, or there's no real, how can we come about this at a new way, right? And so if I were a middle manager and someone came to me and said, well, blah 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 blah, I'm just trying to role play here a little bit and think what would be going on in my head. Am I afraid that my routines that I've been practicing or encouraging you to practice are gonna like go to the wayside and I'm not gonna be needed? Or um, you know, I might not look like I'm the one with all the answers, or will someone else
The
replace me because
expert.
they have the answers, right? So I think you're
Mhm.
right. There's a lot of fear in that opportunity to change, you know. So
Yes.
um so what is stage 2 then?
Stage two is actually doubt. And this can show up with defensive behavior as a way of trying to maintain control. And it shows up possibly with resentment, kind of being skeptical about this change, and also resistant, kind of digging in your heels. This can be a great time to really gather accurate, valid information. And instead of ignoring the obvious and only seeing change in your own little way, to move through this stage, stage two, you need to deal with the reality of the change. And some questions you could ask yourself are, what are the facts as I know them right now? When am I going to get more facts? And what is the real truth? You can see we're kind of zeroing in on more data, more information, less emotion.
Oh, I like that. Less emotion. Yeah. And you're right, dealing with the facts. Sometimes change, I remember other people not wanting to change because they're afraid it's going to be more work, right?
Yes.
Um, So yeah, just gathering the information to see is how much work is this really going to be? If it is there someone else who can help me or right? Answer some of those questions. So that's interesting. Um, as we move through these stages, how it shows up, you know. Um, you're saying we can actually move ourselves through change in a productive way that serves us well, as opposed to trying to fight it. So is stage 3 more about that or?
Absolutely. We've gotten all these facts now. We know what the information is. This stage 3, I kind of call it discomfort. This is the time when your brain is actually organizing all this information, trying to organize your change experience. And this is also known as kind of the breakdown or breakthrough stage, because what's happening here is can send you back to stage 2 with overwhelming fear, or move you into stage 4, which is discovery. And you can ask yourself, what steps can I take right now to get moving in the right direction? And who can help me?
Yeah, so this stage sounds pretty pivotal to me, right? Like you can go back or you can go forward. There's like a choice here that you consciously have to make, right? Um,
Yes.
so I think that's interesting that if we choose to push forward, we finally get to a breakthrough, possibly, right? But
Yes.
if we choose to move backward, then we're back in our old ways, right? Um,
Exactly.
and I think it's important in this stage or in this process that we maybe have someone to bounce things off of, like that's why
Absolutely.
you as a life coach and I have some training as life coach. I think that's why it's so valuable, because we push up against things that we resist. But if we just kind of take a breath and relax into it and start to kind of embrace it, and then consciously later make a choice after going through these first few steps, I think doing that with someone else is so valuable, right? Gives you a different perspective. Hey, well, what do you think they're thinking? Or what do you think
Yes.
they're trying to do as a whole, right? So, yeah, the stage 3 is really pivotal, for me, but I like the next stage. So tell us about that.
Sure. I love what you're saying, Debbie, about kind of having a buddy, because remember that each of us processes change on a different timeline and with different intensity. You and I will probably process changes differently because we have different personalities, different experiences. That's really the value of finding someone else to kind of talk through. They may be further along in the process, and if so, it can have some empathy and can help guide you along the path. In this discovery stage, you start to really have good, resourceful thoughts. Your behavior is more energized. You're moving forward, and you begin to feel hopeful and about the fact that you can make your own decisions. You're not being dragged along. You're leaning into this change. And a couple questions you could ask yourself when you get to this stage are, what are my next best steps? And what will happen if I take them? Notice it's not when, if. There's still a little wiggle room here. We want to continue to lean forward into the next stage, stage 5.
Yeah, that's again, I'm thinking of getting a new piece of equipment and someone standing next to you and reaching over you to punch buttons and show you different things and different ways and different things. And so yeah, it can be trying, but if we kind of relax into it, then um and kind of accept it or be at least open to it. Like the first stage is just be open, no one's forcing it on you. No one says you have to punch this button or that button, you know. And remembering their motive is to make your job easier, right? This is to help make your job easier. So remembering it could be painful, but allowing there to be some discovery, um, you know, is an important part of the process, I think.
Yes. I love what you're saying about the intention is about making your life easier. That there's a mindset shift that may need to happen for some people. Sometimes in life we think, oh, they're just trying to make my job harder, make my life harder.
Mhm.
Assume positive intent. That's really, we're people. Most people are out to help each other, make each other's lives easier. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, I've seen it over and over in 28 years of healthcare where they bring new equipment in and people are like, oh, I hate this product. I don't like this line of product, meaning one product line versus another product line. And I've worked on that product line before and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I just like to always try to keep an open mind. But I've seen and just even recently, the past maybe 3 years, new equipment came in and this young lady hated that equipment and she kept trying to force that equipment product to work to her what she exactly had it to or needed or had to have it do for her instead of her conforming to the machine and what the machine. And so when you're trying to force somebody else into your own expectations, she ended up leaving the job and she loved the job, right? But I think it can it can have some adverse outcomes, right? You start a new job, you start new PTO accrual, you start all the benefits different, and I'm sure there are other reasons as well, but yeah, um, not being open to that concept can really just make or break you on any job, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sounds like your colleague got stuck in that stage too, that fear. She just couldn't get out of her own way. She just was,
Yeah,
that's
and
tough.
maybe it was, a few other things in life. Maybe her life was changing in other ways as well. That was kind of forcing some of the change, and she was taking it out on the outside change that was coming her way as well, right? Um,
Yes.
so it's interesting to watch people embrace it or not embrace it, and reasons why they do, and then the results of it, right? So, there's definitely results to being resistant. It's just to things, right? So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, asking these questions and moving through it with maybe another person or um, someone else can be really um, pivotal, I think, for people's career, right? Either you're open to a new possibility or you're not open to a new possibility.
That's exactly right. By the way, too, Debbie, all of these things are tips and questions that you can use on the job and you can use them in life. And we have change happening all around us. And you're right, your colleague may have been going through some other life changes at the same time this new equipment showed up. And it's sometimes it can be overwhelming, which is really, if we boil down some of these really straightforward tips and techniques and skills, we can sometimes see our way through that a little bit more quickly, a little more effectively, with less negative outcome, really minimizing that and maximizing the positive.
Yeah, I think being open to it definitely allows us to um and to expand our horizons, right? I think we were talking earlier offline about how different being open to new things just really opened your career, to having all these other opportunities. And so
Absolutely.
being open to new ways of training or new ways of learning or new ways of whatever, um, or new things in life,
Mm,
um, it's a pivotal thing in your career, you know.
yes.
So what are you are we on the last two stages? What are the last two stages about?
Yes. The next stage, stage 5, is all about understanding. And I love this one because now by the time you get to here, you're really beginning to make sense of what was and what is. And this is a deeper level of understanding because you've learned about what it takes to incorporate this change. And you've also learned about yourself, which is cool. So you've gotten some additional skills and you could call upon these so that when there are changes in life, and there will be more, you will be more confident and improve your productivity. And you're really ready to move forward. And a key question at this stage is, what can I always do to move more quickly and effectively through change? Because you're collecting all of these mechanisms and ways of moving forward. And really, the final stage is stage 6, and we call that integration. And in this stage is really when we fully integrate the change experience into our lives, whatever that might look like. And we touched on this earlier. Emotionally, we may also experience empathy, and we may look around us and be able to help other people that are working through this change cycle as well, offering to be helpful. And you have even a more renewed sense of confidence and the ability to be flexible so that when that next round of change comes along, you'll be able to hit it just more confidently and with more tools in your toolbox. You'll feel satisfied, your thoughts will be more focused, and your behavior is more generous and relaxed. Great job.
Yeah, I think of this often in my life. I've had a lot of change being a traveler, right? You change all the time. And I think you're right. Some of the things you learn is to change a little faster, because you understand the steps of change. You understand the process of change. You
Mhm.
understand, I'm at a new job. I've been here a week. Okay, I'm getting it, but I don't quite have all the details of the job down yet. And but to step back and say, this is normal, right? This is normal.
Absolutely.
I'm in a normal place. I'm doing okay. Reassuring myself, okay, this is normal to feel frustrated. Okay, this is normal to need to go out and ask for help, or what button does this, or who changed that, or, different
Yes.
there
Well,
for
and
like 2 or 3 weeks. When we got new equipment, everybody's changing everything on the machine and putting it the way they like it or don't like it. And, it's just, it can get kind of
that's
hairy and
huge.
sticky.
Yes.
And
Well,
I
and
think
for
that's
you
one.
as a traveler, especially, Debbie, not only are you changing into a new role in a new setting with new people, you're living in a new city, in a new home, meeting new friends over margaritas. I mean,
That's
it's
right.
a lot to go through. So you could be going through that change cycle more quickly at work than you are in at home in life,
Right.
or vice versa. So
Right.
that's what also I think really that's you're dealing with a lot.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
think travelers become masters of change, right? To some degree,
Yes.
and yeah, as a traveler, it's sometimes hard to say, is it because I'm not changing, or because the system is having undue expectations of you, right? Um,
Yes,
so you run into situations like that, but you do gain much more confidence and um I don't want to say casual, but you're more relaxed with this with the change, right? You become more flexible and you don't
absolutely.
get as stressed and you're like, okay. And someone tells you the
Exactly.
same thing three times and you're like, okay, because
That's right.
that's part of it, right?
That's
Where
right. It's that resilience. You're thinking, I've got to be strong. I've got to be strong. To be strong. And yet that flexibility and resilience is the magic. That's the secret sauce in all of this.
right.
And that really, boy, that could be powerful. Great recipe for success with change.
Yeah. But I think it's also true that that having I think you can also have too much change sometimes. We were talking a little earlier about how sometimes life is just changing too fast, too much, and too many different levels. And there's a time when you have to like, okay, hang on, something's got to stay stable, right? Um,
Yes.
so I think we can have the extremes, right? You don't change at all, or you're changing so much that things kind of go haywire all the time. And so you kind of have to find that middle ground, which is yet another plug for life coaches, right? Because
Yes.
having someone walk with you through life to help you accomplish your professional goals, which also affect your personal life, right? Like you can't
Yes.
really separate that sometimes, and there's always things going on. Like I've met some great colleagues at the recent society, SDMS, our professional organization, and they're striving for all these things, but yet she's like, but I'm raising three teenagers, as well, right? And so there's
Yes.
always this
And juggling.
push and pull and juggle of how much change can I handle on both
Mhm.
levels, right? So sometimes it's
Yeah.
not just that life is changing at work, but life is also changing at home. And that makes work change a lot heavier, right? So
Yes.
I think it's more than just work change. It's work change and life change sometimes, or
All
maybe
at
life
once.
is stable, right? And so you can handle a little bit more work change, right?
Mhm.
So I
Exactly.
think those are that's important to understand when you're looking at change of how well you um accept change, right? Depending on how much change and all the other areas of life is going on. So I think you're right. The more you do, the more you can look back. I remember mentoring a young lady and telling her, okay, you might not like it, but look at it with an open mind, right?
Great
Okay,
advice.
it's not my favorite
Yes.
kind of machine, but let's just see what they've got. What have they done? How have they made things better, Um, because you might be surprised. I went to a job and they had a machine and it was a smaller machine. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is not going to be good, right? This small little machine, and I need some penetration, and this little machine probably isn't going to give it to me. And I was so pleasantly surprised that I was like, wow, like this might be on my radar for suggestions moving forward for smaller doctor's offices or even as like labor and delivery or point of service or I mean that machine can put out some really good and so I went into it with like oh I don't know and I was so surprised at what it could do and how my images turned out so the other things are changing other people change
Yes.
other companies change. Everyone is constantly trying to improve themselves. So making room and giving them permission to change, right? You're almost, by being open to it, you're almost like giving them permission to prove themselves to be different, right?
I
Than
love
what
that. Yes.
you think in your head might not be different, you know? So
Yes. I
I've
love
been
that. That's so true.
definitely pleasantly surprised as well with people and with equipment, right?
Yes. And to
Because,
say nothing of like all the processes that go around that,
right.
roles and responsibilities, the processes that are involved with all this different technology and equipment. So it could compound pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's an interesting process, right? And especially in the healthcare field when everything is changing. I was at a place where they changed some major computer processing um hard drive ways of processing and uh, uh, getting their information into the computer and about the patient and different things. And they upgraded their machines in like 3 weeks. You know, two big, huge, major changes in a really short period of time. And I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare. And I mean to tell you, those people just took it like a champ, man. They
Wow.
got in, they did what they needed to do, they learned this system, that system, and it was the smoothest thing I've ever experienced. And hardly any complaints, you know. It was a little discomforting at times, right? Which is expected. But
Yeah.
you know, when we go in with such a closed mind, I think that really works against us, you know,
Yes. Well,
so much.
congratulations on that. That sounds like a huge success.
Well, it
Amazing.
wasn't me. It was the place I was working at. But yeah, that was a huge win for them and said a lot about them as a group and as a team, I think. So
Yes.
yeah, thank you for
I think
sharing all this and your thoughts and
absolutely.
different things. And I think that's the purpose of a life. One of the purposes of life coach is to help you know how to um navigate through change because sometimes it's really hard choices. Like we're not talking about just equipment changes. We're talking about maybe a different career as a life coach, helping someone walk through and navigate that, or maybe a different life partner, or having children or not having children, or, you know, huge life
Yes.
things that really take a lot of thought. And sometimes I process things better by talking about it, right? I get it out of my head and I love to hear other people's perspective and different things on that. And they help me walk through change, right? Just Saturday, I went
Yeah.
to a seminar and I was listening to this lady's talk and I thought, oh my God, you know, there are just certain light bulb moments for me that I thought will help me shift. Like I say, small hinges swing big doors,
Oh,
right?
I love that.
So
Yes.
little light bulb moments or little ideas of change or little cracks in the door to like, well, maybe I might consider this, right? Can really make huge changes for you and propel you forward in both personal and professional lives. So thank you for
Love
sharing
that.
this
Such a great.
process.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure, Debbie. So great to see you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. So one last question I always ask every guest, since the name of our podcast is It's All About the Frequency, I believe that high frequency is joy and low frequency, you're depressed. And so, what do you do personally to move yourself up the scale to more joy versus staying in, I don't feel so hot kind of a mood?
I love that. Such a great question. think it's important to look at life through rose-colored glasses, even though there might be a situation, a person, a thing that you don't feel like doing that. It's hard. It could be tough. I mean, that's just the reality. That coupled with eating right, exercising, surrounding myself with people who are like-minded, not people that think just like I do, but people that share a positive outlook, that share an interest in exercise and eating well, even throwing in a few margaritas. That never hurt either.
Right?
Right.
I love it. I think laughter, you guys, you and the friends I've met with you, have given me the gift of laughter, right? We have
Yes.
fun and we laugh at ourselves. And that's been one of your very many gifts to me, is the gift of laughter and fun. But
Thank you. That's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. Well, that's awesome. So you would say self-care, maybe, right?
That's a beautiful way to summarize. Yes, self-care, and that could be different for each individual person. I think it's a matter of finding out about what that could be for you and then trying that on for size.
Yeah, and it could be different at different times, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it might be I need a nap, or might be I need a walk,
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Nicely said.
So awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, and thanks for all that you've done organizationally wise, and just as a friend. And I'm so grateful that you're a part of my life. Um, so thank you for your contribution.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm glad you're in my life too.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to It's All About the Frequency podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Share it with a friend, and remember to keep your frequency high.